June 4th, 1965, Howard University in Washington, D.C.
We have seen in 1957 and 1960 and again in 1964 the first civil rights legislation in this nation in almost an entire century. As Majority Leader of the United States Senate, I helped to guide two of these bills through the Senate. And as your President, I was proud to sign the third. And now, very soon, we will have the fourth. A new law guaranteeing every American the right to vote. No act of my entire administration will give me greater satisfaction than the day when my signature makes this bill to the law of this land. The Voting Rights Bill will be the latest and among the most important in a long series of victories. But this victory, as Winston Churchill said of another triumph for freedom, is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end. But it is, perhaps, the end of the beginning. That beginning is freedom. And the barriers to that freedom are tumbling down. Freedom is the right to share fully and equally in American society. To vote, to hold a job, to enter a public place, to go to school. It is the right to be treated in every part of our national life as a person equal in dignity and promise to all others.
Coming up, calls with Senate leaders, United Auto Workers President Walter Reuther and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as President Johnson works to turn his voting rights vision into law. We begin on December 14th, 1964, a little more than a month after his landslide election victory. President Johnson held a strategy session with then Deputy Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach.
I've already told Dick Russell some of them that we're going to try to get everybody to register. And that those that don't register, we're going to register postmasters. That the congressmen nominate them and the senators confirm them, and they're bound to be good men, even in Mississippi and Georgia. But we're going to see that the Attorney General and the Postmaster General got the blanks and whatever they need if they're registered. If they can get halfway qualified. And he growled a little bit, but that may not be the way. I don't know. I want you to undertake the greatest midnight legislative drafting that's happened since Corcoran and Cohen wrote the Holding Company Act. On that, I basically believe that if we can have a simple, effective method of getting them registered. Now, if the state laws are too high and they disqualify a bunch of them, maybe we can go in the Supreme Court and get them held unconstitutional. Or if the registrars make them stand in line too long, maybe we can work that out where the postmasters can do it. Let's find some way that we...
problem, under the Constitution.
Yes, that's right. I know that. How can we beat it?
All right.
Can we beat that some way?
It's we've tried hard to beat it, and of course that's what we have in the act that you got through, and then these modifications of it in the last thing, 57, 60, and then now. You're familiar with all those problems.
No, I'm really not. I don't know what we are really doing, but I know
there's
this.
a constitutional amendment, Mr. President, to, just flatly have federal officials register for federal elections.
Well, let's do that. Let's shoot at that. Let's recommend that. If you can't do it any other way.
Well, let's go into all the other alternatives, and then
let's get the best people you've got. Now, Joe Rowe's been talking about postmasters.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what you can do, and we're going to need it pretty quick.
A month later, the president talked strategy again, this time with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
As effective as all of them voting. That's right. That'll get you a message that all the eloquence in the world won't bring, because the fellow will be coming to you then instead of you calling him.
And it's very interesting, Mr. President, to notice that the only states that you didn't carry in the South, the 5 southern states, have less than 40% of the Negroes registered to vote. Very interesting to notice that. I think the professor from the University of Texas in a recent article brought this out very clearly. So it demonstrates that it's so important to get Negroes registered to vote in large numbers in the South, and it will be this coalition of the Negro vote and the moderate white vote that will really make the new South.
That's exactly right. I think it's very important that we not to say that we're doing this and we not do it just because it's Negroes or whites, but we take the position that every person born in this country, when he reaches a certain age, that he have a right to vote, just like he has a right to fight, and that we just extend it, whether it's a Negro, whether it's a Mexican, or who it is. And number two, I think that we don't want special privilege for anybody. We want equality for all, and we can stand on that principle. But I think if you can contribute a great deal by getting your leaders and you yourself taking very simple examples of discrimination, where a man's got to memorize Longfellow, whether he's got to quote the first 10 amendments, or he's got to tell you what Amendment 15, 16, 17 is, and then ask them if they know, and show what happens. And some people don't have to do that, but when a Negro comes in, he's got to do it. And if we can just repeat and repeat and repeat, I don't want to follow Hitler, but he had an idea that if you just take a simple thing and repeat it often enough, even if it wasn't true, why, people accept it. Well, now this is true, and if you can find the worst condition that you run into in Alabama, Mississippi, or Louisiana, or South Carolina, where, well, I think one of the worst I ever heard of is the president of the school at Tuskegee, or the head of the government department there, or something, being denied the right to cast a vote. And if you just take that one illustration and get it on radio and get it on television and get it on in the pulpits, get it in the meetings, get it every place you can, pretty soon the fellow that didn't do anything but drive a tractor, he'll say, well, that's not right, that's not fair. And then that will help us on what we're going to shove through in the end.
You're exactly right about that.
And if we do that, we'll break through as it'll be the greatest breakthrough of anything, not even except in this 64 Act. I think the greatest achievement of my administration, I think the greatest achievement in foreign policy, I said to a group yesterday, was the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. But I think this will be bigger, because it'll do things that even that 64 Act couldn't do.
Well, Mr. President, I certainly appreciate your giving me this time, and certainly appreciate getting your ideas on these things. But that I just want to share it with you, and I wanted you to know that we have the feeling, but we have not set on any particular person. We felt that Bob Weaver, Whitney Young, or Ralph, but somebody like that. Every one of those people have my respect, and what you do is this: you just say to them that I'm not going to send a message to the Congress and say that if you will give me this power, I will do this as a trade, because I think that would do us all damage. But if I can get my urban and housing affair, you know what my intentions are. Yeah. And I've got a pretty good cabinet. As far as I know, I'm going to keep them all, probably except maybe the Secretary of Treasury. Perhaps, I don't know what's going to happen to the Attorney General. I've given a good deal of thought to folks like Abe Fortas, a good deal of thought to folks like Clark Clifford, a good deal of thought to Katzenbach, a good deal of thought to all of those folks are pretty liberal, and they're right on our question. I've appointed John Doerr in charge of the department over there, but I think most of the others are planning to stay, and I need them on these big programs, health and education and defense and state. But the one thing we want to do is shove through our housing reorganization and put them in charge of the cities. Then New York City's got to come, sit down and talk to these people. Chicago's got to come. New Orleans got to come. Atlanta's got to come. If they don't, they just can't move. And then I think we'll have a good man that's trained, that's come up through the ranks, that's merit, that's not on account of color, not on account of anything else, but he'll be there. Yes. Well, this is wonderful.
But two things you do for us now. You find the most ridiculous illustration you can on voting and point it up and repeat it and get everybody else to it. Second thing is, please look at that Labor Committee in the House and Senate. Please look at that Health Committee. Please look at that Immigration Committee. And let's us try to get health and education and poverty through the first 90 days.
Well, we're going to be done that. You can depend on our absolute support.
Whitney's group can go to talking to them, and Roy's group can, and your group can, and they ought to tell the Ryan of New York, and they ought to tell so-and-so from Philadelphia, and they ought to tell so-and-so from Atlanta. Please get this bill reported. Yeah. Because I don't think you have any conception of the proportion of assistance that comes to your people in these bills. I haven't pointed that out. I haven't stressed it.
But I know they will be, they have been, and will be of even more tremendous help. And,
you can figure out what $8 billion in education, what $1 billion in health, and what $1.5 billion in poverty do if it goes to people who earn less than $2,000 a year. Now, you know who earns less than $2,000, don't you?
That's right. Yes, sir. But it will certainly be a great movement. We've just got to work hard at it.
And I'm part of this administration, but we talked about what we were going to do 3 years. And we had to do it the 4th. We passed 51 bills last year. Now, I've got those messages up there. The first time any president, by January the 15th, ever had a half dozen messages for the Congress. Most of them don't even have their State of the Union until after the inauguration.
Yeah, that's right.
But they're there, and they're ready for them to go to work, and we're not just going to talk. If they'll vote, I'm ready. We've got our recommendations, and we talked the first 3 years of our administration. We promised, and we held it up, and people were be pretty disillusioned, I think, when I finally beat the Rules Committee and got civil rights out.
Yeah, I know.
I think that you might have had a lot more revolution in this country than you could handle if we had that civil rights stay in that Rules Committee under Judge Smith.
I know, that would have been such a disillusion experience.
Well, we talked about it 3 years, you know. But we just did something about it. So that's what we got to do now, and you get in here and help us.
Well, I certainly will, and you know you can always count on that.
Thank you so much.
All right. God bless you. Thank you.
From January 15, 1965, President Johnson and Martin Luther King Jr. On March 11th, the president spoke with now Attorney General Katzenbach, the criticism around Mr. Katzenbach's appointment, and strategized more on voting rights.
Mansfield is huffy and mad and grumpy and determined that the Attorney General could not ignore him. Now, I was trying to decide on a 150-plane strike last night, and I decided on it while this was happening, and then the weather knocked us off. But I believe that it's...
What the time of that note was that before I saw him?
I don't know. I just got it this morning, and I just think that he is a man that is kind of sick and problems and at home and other places, and he feels about the Veterans Hospital. And every time he reads where I was a leader and that I was a dictator and he's not. And I think he gets upset. I would say I'm more to blame for it than anybody else. And I would say Dirksen talking. I don't blame you with it at all or anything else. I think you're doing a wonderful, remarkable job. So I wouldn't feel sad. I only read it to you so that you may know.
I don't cry over spilled milk. I'll try to cure it. I think I have mostly, but it's hard to know with Mike.
No, you can't. And I don't think we have. I think he's got to understand, number one, that you understood in the relations last year that he wanted you when he designated Humphrey. He wanted you to work with Dirksen, and Dirksen called you. And you didn't think that about calling him. But you did talk to Humphrey, who is coordinated last year, and you had planned, if you could even get close to an agreement without throwing him into a big legal argument, to talk to him. But that's the way it is. And then I would take the position that you welcome their bill and put them out in front if they would do it, if they want to. Yeah. Then we'll get a good sound one. But I think you ought to tell Rosenthal to tell the press that you'd be glad to see him at sometime between 5 and 6 this evening. All right. So that when will your injunction? You an hour later?
I'll have to, I'll go back here before noon and call John Doerr in court and see what he thinks we're going to get. He said he thought we'd get it all today.
Well, even if you haven't got it, I think you've got to say that you can't comment on that, but you have hopes, and here's what your petition says. I think you have got to fill the papers. I don't approve at all of your having Mary McGrory in there. I don't want to be critical, but I think that's dangerous because we'll all be afraid to talk to you if we think that they're reporting it on the front page, who you call in what. But I do think that you've got to have the full press in and tell them everything that you humanly can about your actions. And I think you ought to have almost prepared statement orally, starting off saying we sent in the federal presence. We put in the 30 FBIs. We ordered them in. We agreed to join the friend of the court. Here's what we said as the friend of the court in cooperation with the NAACP. And then 1, 2, 3, 4. So it just runs out of their stomach what you've done. Then we sent in under the law Collins. And then we sent in Doerr first, and then Collins, because one, civil rights under the law, the Congress said they wanted a special division, so you put him present. Under the law, they wanted a mediator, Congress did, so you put him present. And then I'd get down to voting rights and say you recommended it. So you're the spokesman here. You're the marshal. You build yourself up as the Burke Marshall deal. That you recommended. It was in the State of the Union. You signed the best lawyers on it. They're working on the message. It's been adjusted, and some say it's too long, and some say it ought to cover this. You're trying to get it to when you can be free of these conferences and the lawsuits and the meetings with the Negro publishers and the meetings with the groups and the pickets and other things to get this. And you believe you'll have it 48 hours to the president. But you're sure. I wouldn't divulge what it's going to contain. Just say it's going to be, we think, this strong voting rights, and say I recommended it last year. Just say I, Katzenbach, did. I believed it ought to be last year. Not lay anything on the Congress. Yeah. But just say I recommended it. And there was some adjustments made, and it didn't come out the way I recommended. But I'm going to recommend it again this year. And the president has accepted my recommendation. I don't know whether he'll accept what I'm sending him now or not, but I'm going to send it to him.
And I assume as soon as he gets it, that he will act on it and make it public to the Congress. And I would hope maybe that we might get him to stay there Saturday. You might ask Mike if he wouldn't come in if we could get the message up Saturday for a few minutes to receive it, so it would be in the Sunday papers. Just have Metcalf preside, and don't give this as the reason. Give something else. Just say he wants to have a meet, and so we could do it. If not, we'll get McCormick to come in the House. One's House ought to be in session. If they can't do that, we'll wait till next week. But I believe it'd be better to get everything shoveled out to them we can. Then when I come along, I can refer to the Attorney General, and I can say that I'm following his recommendations, and I'm going to let him decide and the Vice President decide, and then the impression I'm going to give is that we'll all go together.
Right.
Be sure to point out that you're glad to see any groups, that the Vice President will see any groups, that you've met with them, and that you'll be glad to see the preachers who come in here. I take the initiative. I'm going to tell George Reedy to tell them that we'll be glad to see the preachers, so they don't force ourselves into this. And later, after we meet at 12, I don't want to take you any longer there now, but after we meet at 12, you and I can maybe have lunch together or sit around and list the things that you ought to say. But I would try to get word out to Rosenthal right quick to tell your reporters, so it knocks the thing over mine and takes me off this hot spot.
All right, I'll call him right away.
Okay. I'd make it as late as I could, 5:30, so you got the benefit of any time in Alabama there an hour earlier.
Let me just ask one question on the Mansfield thing. You want me to just ask him whether the Senate's going to be in session, and then say, well...
I would say if I work tonight, Mike, and we're able to grind it out tomorrow, and I could get it through Lee White and the President, would you all be willing to receive it Saturday? And could you do it without saying you're having a special Saturday session to receive it? Could you just say you're going to have a session and have a speech, and then on something else, and then or on anything, and then receive it in routine fashion?
All right.
If he can't, tell him that you'll ask me to ask McCormick, or go over next week.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
From March 11th, 1965, President Johnson and Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach. The voting rights bill began its journey in the Senate on March 18th. Democratic leader Mike Mansfield and Republican leader Everett Dirksen were the main sponsors. Both had worked with Attorney General Katzenbach to draft the language. With a bipartisan group of 66 co-sponsors, the bill went to the Judiciary Committee. To avoid delay tactics by its chair, Mississippi Democrat James Eastland, the Senate instructed the committee to finish its work no later than April 9th. On April 2nd, Attorney General Katzenbach updated the president on the possibility of a rival bill in the House. This one drafted by a lesser-known Republican from Michigan by the name of Gerald Ford.
Hello.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Hi, Mick.
I just wanted to catch you up on the voting bill and where we stood on that. Particularly, we're doing fine on the Senate side with Dirksen, Mansfield. We ought to have something everybody agrees to over the weekend, or finally sew it up Monday. Jerry Ford is going to come out with some Republican version of a bill, I think today or tomorrow. I expect that'll be something John Lindsay has drafted. It won't be very different from what we're doing. I don't think it'll make much of a splash, but that's his partisan angle to it. I'm just going to do that. That makes McCulloch unhappy, but it's going to be done that way.
And what's McCulloch going to do?
Said he might call me for help. That's what he told me. I can't get much more out of him. But Ford said he was going to come out with something. And McCulloch says it makes him unhappy. Now McCulloch will work to bring that into the bipartisan bill on the House side.
He will try to get Ford's bill adopted.
No, he'll try to work out a common agreement with Seller on a bill, which will look very much like actually the one we worked on over in the Senate, which will incorporate some of the ideas modified that Ford will come out with. I think it'll work out all right, Mr. President, but I think Ford's going to make his little partisan play here. and then to try to take credit for some expansions and some of the administration bill, the Mansfield Dirksen bill.
What will he do? What expansions will it be?
Well, I think primarily he'll extend the federal examiner system so that it applies in areas without literacy tests where a certain number of complaints have been received. Now, and he'll tie that to some kind of judicial proceeding, because Lindsay's a good enough lawyer to do that. And the other thing that he may do, and it worries me more than that, because we have provision that'll cope with that. But the thing that worries me more is that he'll come in with the old so-called Title III provision, whether you remember that or not.
Yeah.
That's what Lindsay really wants, and that's what I've been trying to keep out of here. You can't do it without a national police force. You know, we'd be into every situation if we had that. But that's the one that worries me more. Now, Ford may not go that far because he's being pulled two ways. But he's, as you know, giving Lindsay and those fellows a good deal more scope than they ever had under Charlie Halleck.
Does Lindsay have to be partisan? I thought he was a reasonably nonpartisan fellow.
Lindsay? He's a very partisan, nonpartisan. The nonpartisan is his sort of public image. And he's pretty partisan. And of course, this is Ford more than Lindsay. Ford has given Lindsay more power in the Republican Party there, he and Charlie Goodell and those fellas. And he's listening to them more, but this is Ford's little play. I think more than it is Lindsay's. The other thing I can't do is be the way to put it back on Republicans, and I'd love to do it, Mr. President, to get those Puerto Ricans in New York voting.
Yeah.
But I can't get the Republicans to go along with that, and I suppose you wouldn't want to go along with 750,000 Republican votes. I guess that's the way they feel about it. They won't say that, but they can't get it in there. You know, it could be the difference in New York in any close year. They're all Democrats.
Well, won't Lindsay's bill try to bring them in?
I don't think it will. I don't think it will. I can't get I can't get Dirksen, Republicans in the Senate, to go along with that. And I understand why they won't. I don't think Lindsay will do it. Lindsay's got nothing to gain from doing it in New York. He likes to talk about the Puerto Ricans. He doesn't really want to do anything about it. Because he knows if that were put in, I'd recommend not jump at it unless somebody told me not to.
Yeah, I would sure do it.
Every one of them's a Democratic vote. I just can't see John Lindsay enfranchising, 5,750,000 Democrats.
You might really try to box him in on it, make him deny it.
I think that's one way that might cope with it. Might meet him on this one. I don't think it's I don't think it's going to make a great deal of difference in getting the voting bill, getting a good one the way we want it, but it's going to be a little play for the Republicans. That's why I want you to know about it. When we see it, we'll see how we can cope with it in terms of cutting down Ford's play. I'd probably get Halleck to attack it.
Yeah, sure would. Have you got...
The other thing is timing down there, Mr. President. And this you ought to speak to Mansfield about. Dirksen wants to get it out on the 9th and on the calendar, and then take it up as the first order of business after the Easter vacation. Neither of them feel they can get it passed before the Easter vacation. The House wants to get it out and to rules, see if they can get Judge Smith to agree to bring it out of rules before the end of this month after Easter. So And I don't think the House can do any better than that. The only question's over in the Senate. Whether you want to take it up before... Dirksen asked me this question in front of Mansfield, and I played it as though it was the civil rights groups. I said, well, I don't know. I think probably that could be explained to the civil rights groups if it were necessary. That was what Senator Mansfield wanted. I thought you wanted it out voted on just quick as it could be.
Now, what does Mansfield want to do?
Well, he's going to talk it over with Dirksen again today. He'll end up doing what Dirksen wants, I suppose he usually does. But Mansfield talked about getting it up and debating it, bringing it right away up and debating it. Now, they'll have some quorum problems, I think, next week. I think Dirksen's right about that. And Dirksen says he doesn't want to divide the debate over the Easter holiday. Mansfield said he thought they ought to just take it up and start it.
How much holiday are they going to take?
So about 9-10 days, I guess.
3 days later, the president talked to Senate Republican leader Everett Dirksen about the timing for a vote.
How are you? I'm all right. How are you? Oh, a little bit grinding away. I am bushed. This goddamn voting rights bill. That reminds me, I just had talk with Mike. Don't make any statements about driving that damn thing through before Easter. We think now we've got a good bill. We got 20 guys around the table to put the finishing touches on it on Saturday, late Saturday afternoon. We're finishing with the testimony of the stone. So is the House. House is rambling around on a lot of goddamn stuff. But when the time comes, it'll be the bill that we've got drawn up because I think it's a good one. Now, Mike said if we could get about 3 or 4 days of debate on it before Easter, that would be all that was necessary. Then we could leave our Easter recess intact because they're going to be grousing to beat hell up there. They've all made plans about it. But I think that's good progress. Now, I checked with George Spencer to see what kind of flack we would have from your side. And there's not going to be too much. This thing isn't going to draw out very long, couple of weeks, and I think we got it made. So don't make a public statement you're going to drive it through, because they're going to get their hackles.
Well, I never made a statement in my life I was going to drive anything.
Well, that's right. It wasn't quite that way. They get the impression, though, that if you say it ought to be done before Easter, that...
No, you all said that. I haven't said anything like that.
Yeah.
But they said that what they like to find something anybody says is wrong. They can't find anything right. Now, I haven't said anything about this at all. I've just said that they asked me on the education bill, and I said that the leadership had said, I just quoted them, that they planned to have it up on Tuesday. They won't know why it went over from last week to this week in the committee.
Yeah.
And they said they wanted to give them plenty of time so nobody could say that they did anything from Thursday until next Tuesday. To consider it in committee, and they said that wouldn't delay them, though, actually, because I just gave them 4 or 5 days studied there and would take less time on the floor if they did, and that they had assured me that they would try to get it up on Wednesday and that they thought they'd pass it by Friday. They didn't extend session.
Well, they're going to finish that this week.
Yeah.
Now, with respect to voting rights, I hated like hell to leave some of them in the dark because we had Strom this morning in John Stennis. We've modified this rather substantially to make damn sure that we'll be on good constitutional ground.
Yeah.
But I couldn't say it to them. Now, they're going to have a little time to look it over and peck around. And I think if we work it out that way, that's going to be all to the good, and it's going to save us time in the end.
It is if we don't get into another situation, Selma, while we're waiting. Yeah. That's the damn danger.
Well,
and these boys, Strom and John, are going to be as strong against it when they end, stronger than they are in the start. You got no chance there. And I sure don't want to have to send go through Selma, because we got through it locally pretty good. And if it hadn't been for that woman last night, we'd have had a perfect record. But if they think we're dilly-dallying and off for Eastern, why,
it creates a hell of a lot of problems.
When you start to consider the amount of staff work we've done on that damn bill, the senators are entitled to some time to have a good look-see. And that's all the more reason, I think, why we ought to take that Easter recess as planned.
Once the bill came to the floor, it faced a filibuster, led by a group of Southern senators, that lasted 24 days. During that time, the president spoke to United Auto Workers President Walter Reuther. They talked about an amendment on poll taxes that was sponsored by Senator Ted Kennedy of Massachusetts.
You're going to get passed in the House. You're going to get it out of the Senate. But you may someday get a majority for it in the Senate, but I don't believe you'll ever get 2/3 for it in the Senate. And I think you can get the same thing. You know what they did? Katzenbach told them, said, here's what you do, fellas, kind of like one of these Atlantic City deals that you were in on. Katzenbach told them, said, here's what you do. Now, here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to a 3-judge appellate court. And you make your finding, and I'll take the authority. I'll have the authority. I'll go in. I'll get a prompt hearing. I can get it in 48 hours. Then I can appeal it direct to the Supreme Court. They considered it, almost wanted it. One or two of them said, well, we wouldn't have a fight or an issue, and we've got to dramatize this thing, so I can't take that. So they refused to take it. Humphrey thought they ought to take it. Everybody else thought they ought to take it. But they refused to take it. So he couldn't get anything else by. He's got Dirksen, and Dirksen's got a hell of a good legal staff, almost as good as the Attorney General's. And the Attorney General knows it. And he's worked out 2 bills with him. So he figured that he had to make it stand up, so he had to go back and tell them it wouldn't work. Tell the Dirksens and so forth that he couldn't get the thing put over. And so nothing was done. Tuesday morning, before they voted, I guess it's Tuesday morning, Humphrey was sitting in a leadership meeting with McCormick and the rest of us and all of us, and he got a call. And you know what the call was? It's from Teddy. And you know what he said? He said, we're willing to take what Katzenbach told us last week. And Humphrey said, wonderful, but I better stay out of it. I don't want to make angry at me, Mansfield. But you all get over to Mansfield and tell him right quick. They went over and they got in Mansfield's office 25 minutes before the Senate met and told him they were ready to go with what Katzenbach had written out. And Mansfield said, well, I haven't got time to clear it with Dirksen. I haven't got time to clear it with the other people. And we better just vote on it. He's stubborn and mad anyway. So they voted on it. They didn't need to ever vote on it if they'd have made the decision a week before or a day before or so forth. So somebody's got to have some judgment like you have that's based on principle, but also is based on realism. There's no use asking Ford to give you $9 an hour, even if he is selling more cars and making more than he ever made. He's not going to do it. But you might get 3. And that's what we need up there.
Well, look, this is my point. I think, you see, I know you feel as I do, that on an issue this fundamental, it's a goddamn crime that most of your friends are on the wrong side.
That's right.
And it seems to me that there ought to be enough skill, enough common commitment and belief in what we're trying to do for men of goodwill to work this goddamn problem out.
Yes, what they've got to do is they've got to put down the best lawyer they've got that they trust. And I don't know whether it's Phil Hart or whether it's Bobby. Bobby, they tell me, really wanted to vote with Katzenbach, believe that Katzenbach is a hell of a good lawyer. I think he is. The only reason I appointed him is because he was a Kennedy lawyer, and after I worked with him 6 months, I thought he could handle civil rights without being a suspect, without being a Texan, could get along with the Kennedys, whom I don't want to fight, and would be good for the government. Now, there's not one president in 20 that would appoint the Kennedy man as his Attorney General.
That's right.
Do you think you'd go over and get George Meany's lawyer or whoever it is, the guy that you kicked out of UAW or something? That's right. But I did it. I thought it was big. And I trust him. I don't think he double-crossed me for Bobby Kennedy or the United States government, anybody else. He's going to just tell everybody what he thinks. And he's honest. Now, he's got some good people advising him. He's got Cox over in Solicitors. He's got John Doerr over in the civil rights, and so on and so on. They need to get Katzenbach, who is not arbitrary, not stubborn, backs up every day in cabinet and says, well, let's try it this way if you don't like it that way. Get him, and the best lawyer they got may be Phil Hart or whoever he is. They ought to sit down and agree on something that all Democrats except the South can agree on.
Well, that's what I'm going to work towards.
That's all it is to it. I don't give a goddamn what it is, and even if the court holds it's unconstitutional. All right, but I can't sign a bill my Attorney General tells me is unconstitutional.
Oh, that's right. There's no argument about that. It seems
Did you hear that?
that I can't disagree with that at all. Nobody else can.
All right, well,
if you've got a man who's your Attorney General, you have to either listen to him or get another one.
That's right. And just bear in mind, they have never thought about this process of first getting the cloture, second getting it passed, and third getting it signed. Because they think it takes care of me one little inch. They don't know me. They got the wrong bear by the tail.
Well, I know you, and that's why I know that you're going to do this job.
Well, you tell them you're the only goddamn one that's had time enough and hasn't been busy enough and got nothing to do out there but handle a few 100,000 auto workers that's ever discussed it with me. I never have had an opportunity to talk to one of them about it.
I think that's a goddamn scandal.
I used to, when I even wanted to get a little resolution through to go over the weekend, I'd call Eisenhower and say, Mr. President, this is something that might interfere with your plans, and what do you think about it? But here's what they call the Johnson bill. Every day it suffers something. It's a Johnson bill. When it's going good and it's high and mighty, it's a bill that's drafted by the Kennedy boys, Attorney General, and Mansfield and Dirksen. But when some bitch gets in trouble, it becomes a Johnson bill. Well, it's not mine. I just told him before any nigger raised a question, you or anybody else, I said, I'm not going to be president long. But while I am president, brother, I'm going to take care of voting in this country, and everybody's going to be able to vote. And that's what I want done. I'd like to do it at 18. I'd like to do it free. I don't give a damn how ignorant they are. They got enough instinct to know how to vote because they've been voting for me all these years. A lot of ignorant people.
You only got PhD degrees. You never made it, would you?
Never would. No, sir. My Mexicans, most of them can't read and write.
No, but they know who's...
They know. They're just like my beagle. They can smell around the heels, and they know just who's who. They can.
Sometimes they have a hell of a lot more common sense than the guy with the degree.
My beagle runs up and he smells my ankles, and he knows that this is the man right here. And
where you did too. Well, you're doing a great job, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you, fella.
I'll be in touch with you.
All right.
Bye.
President Johnson with United Auto Workers President Walter Reuther on May 14, 1965. 9 days later, the Senate finally mustered a two-thirds vote to end the filibuster. Then, after a 2-month odyssey that included more wrangling on poll taxes, the House passed its version on July 9th by a 333-85 margin. The two sides spent nearly a month reconciling their differences in conference committee, and on August 4th, sent a final version to the president. That night, the president took a call with Mike Mansfield and Everett Dirksen.
Excuse me, I had a bunch of people in another office, and I had to go to another phone so I could talk. How you getting along?
Fine. I'm down here in Everett Dirksen's office.
Give him my regards.
We just passed the conference report on the voting rights bill.
Well, wonderful, wonderful.
And I want you to talk to him and discuss with him some of the possibilities you raised the other day. He did a great job. He lost out on his amendment, but he came through with this.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'll be very happy to, Mike.
He's right here.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi. How are you, my friend? Glad to hear you.
All right, how are you?
You and Mike up there fraternizing together?
Yes, sir.
That's wonderful. That's good. How you feeling, Everett?
I'd have felt better if you'd offered me half a dozen votes.
Well, you didn't want me to. You told me you didn't want me to do anything but sit there, and all I'd have done is just stir up 10 more against you. You know,
I wanted you to interfere on the right side. That's all.
Well, you did a
voting rights bill out.
You ought to be proud of that, my friend.
Well, we are proud of it. And
we had a lot to do with that.
Give Seller a compliment. That house really abused him over there when they had that.
All right.
They crack him for turning cold shoulder and not supporting the House position on cold.
I will.
Many a rough time.
I will. Now, let me ask you, he wants my judgment on this judge's bill. Is that a necessary bill?
Well, the judicial conference recommended it, of course. But frankly, I don't know that we need it until next year.
He says that y'all didn't have any hearings in Judiciary Committee.
Yeah, we had hearings. We had a subcommittee that not only took some testimony, but they worked rather closely with us.
You must have made a hell of a speech there today. The tickers made me wish I was there listening to you.
Well, why weren't you here?
Well, because I can't have any fun anymore. They just lock me up. I can't even drink Sanka. I just have to drink this damned old root beer. They won't let me get out. If I could get out and come visit you, I'd do it nearly every night.
Well, why don't you come right up here now and I'll pour you a drink. Good stiff bourbon.
Well, if you and Mike will stay there about 10 or 15 minutes, I might do it. I'm a little lonesome and I'd like to see you.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm not kidding.
All right, we'll stay.
All right, okay.
All right. My office.
All right.
You know it's it.
Yep. All right.
2 days later, the president came to the Capitol for a signing ceremony. Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and John Lewis were by his side.
So let me now say to every Negro in this country, you must register. You must vote. You must learn. So your choices advance your interest and the interest of our beloved nation. Your future and your children's future depend upon it. And I don't believe that you are going to let them down. This act is not only a victory for Negro leadership. This act is a great challenge to that leadership. It is a challenge which cannot be met simply by protests and demonstrations. It means that dedicated leaders must work around the clock to teach people their rights and their responsibilities and to lead them to exercise those rights and to fulfill those responsibilities and those duties to their country. And if you do this, then you will find, as others have found before you, that the vote is the most powerful instrument ever devised by man for breaking down injustice and destroying the terrible walls which imprison men because they're different from other men. Today, what is perhaps the last of the legal barriers is tumbling, and there will be many actions and many difficulties before the rights woven into law are also woven into the fabric of our nation. But the struggle for equality must now move to a different battlefield. It is nothing less than granting every American Negro his freedom to enter the mainstream of American life.
That night, the president spoke to Attorney General Katzenbach about reports of southern states blocking federal oversight.
He says we send them into Natchez County, the governor, and that they're registered. Everybody shows up there, and they're doing it from an old study, and you don't need them now. That's number one. Number two, that if you go to bringing these people into the state, that you give Ross Barnett and all of them to fault him on these laws. A real club, they say, well, I told you this is exactly what is going to happen, and you just incite them and make it worse, and if you'd send them in the 18th, it'd be all right, and that's not but 10 days, and that he wished you could find some way to be instructing them or something until the 18th so he could win his constitutional amendment. If the first one shows up, they'll say, oh, there's that damn Yankee. He's in here telling you what to do, and that's what I told you these Johnson boys going to do, Johnson and Washington, Johnson and Jackson. I told him that I would talk to you about it, and I asked you to study it over the weekend, that I would give him a commitment that you would do nothing until you had studied it thoroughly, particularly Adams County, which is Natchez, and any other areas.
I think Adams ought to be knocked out.
And then
I agree with him on
that you would call him before you did anything and discuss it. So
I'll do that.
I'll call Stennis and tell him the same thing, and I don't know how you get out of it if you can get out of it, and maybe Eastland's right, maybe Eastland's wrong. It sounds to me, if I were there, it sounds to me, unless we have to produce something by the 18th, that the morning of the 18th would be better than the morning of the 8th for this reason. I think if a Yankee does walk in there, it makes people vote against his program. And he needs his constitutional amendments. They certainly don't hurt us, and they would help us a little, I guess.
That's right, Mr. President.
And we don't want to defeat them. And anything comes from Washington in an election, I'll tell you, hurts you. I've had that happen. Roosevelt endorsed me once and said, my old and trusted friend, and it defeated me.
Well,
he thought he was helping me, and I thought he was helping me, but they use it against you.
the problem is it's awful hard to go into Louisiana, Alabama, and not touch it.
That's right. But maybe we better just skirt it pretty easily and go into Alabama and
we might even
and go into Mississippi and
we might just touch the worst county down.
That's right. Pick out the worst one
county there.
and the smallest one. It's not too far away. Studied. Let's talk about Monday, Tuesday.
All right.
How many are you planning to go into? 2, 3, 4?
The maximum would be 4.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
And talked strategy with Mississippi Senator John Stennis.
But I don't see any reason to send anybody if they're not. Then he said that it would provoke prejudice and just make it deeper. They'd say, well, here Washington comes, and this fellow Johnson that's governor has run out on us, and so on and so forth. And he said Ross Barnett's crowd was stirred up.
Right.
So I told the Attorney General to see if he couldn't study it carefully over the weekend and try to minimize what his problem was and talk to me about it Monday when I get back. And I'll have him call both you and the governor before he...
Well, that's mighty fine. I appreciate this greatly. And you see, Governor Johnson has really gotten out front down there. He's trying to...
I know that. He has. And Attorney General told me that this constitutional amendment and stuff he was doing would be helpful.
Yeah.
And we want to help him. We don't want to hurt him. We think
that's fine.
I put myself, I'm in the same shape, I've been in the same shape for 20 years in the Senate that you are and that he is. And I know something about the problems, and I want to... The Attorney General is going to look at him over the weekend. I'll talk to him, and then he'll call both of you.
Well, that's mighty fine. I deeply appreciate
Tell Coy hello for me.
I will.
Give her a little hug for me, and keep one for yourself.
Thank you, boy. Thank you.
Says old Jim Coleman, he's going to get mighty cocky, and he gets on that big robe up there, isn't he?
Hold him down. We'll hold him down.
After he just got 7 votes against him, tell him that election when you put me in on the Rules Committee is just 87 majority.
Well, he's mighty proud. He's deeply grateful I am.
I think
he really sold that one up.
I think what we ought to call him's old Lightning.
Yeah.
As fast as he runs.
That's right. Well, you really...
Tell him he runs better up here, John, than he does in Mississippi.
That's a good one.
All right, you tell him that.
I will.
Goodbye.
Yeah, thank you a lot. Thank you.
Since 1965, the Voting Rights Act has been amended and reauthorized 5 more times, most recently in 2006. But in 2013, the Supreme Court struck down a key federal oversight provision. In August 2021, the House of Representatives passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which reestablished that provision. As of December, it is awaiting action in the Senate. Next time on Presidential Recordings, conversations between President Johnson and his most loyal and influential partner, his wife, Lady Bird. Follow Presidential Recordings wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. The Lyndon B. Johnson Presidential Library and Foundation, along with the University of Virginia Miller Center, have more conversations from the Johnson presidency. You can find them at lbjtapes.org.